Getting started here. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to the first of a series of webinars that we're putting on here at US Ignite and NIST as part of our Global City Teams Challenge program as we move towards our June 2015 demonstrations. So the goals of this webinar, sort of lunch and learn series, if you will, are twofold. First, we want to give you all a spotlight to discuss the exciting projects and how they're coming together into the action clusters as well, to highlight opportunities for partnership among the larger audience. So we are recording this webinar, and we'll be making the recording available for those who couldn't make it. And we'll send that link out in an email later this week to all those who signed up at globalcityteams.org on the US Ignite site. Secondly, the goal is to create a space for a community of best practices and sharing. We wanted to provide some help guidance to the larger community, those of you who might be new to this program and are forming teams and are more in the idea phase. We want to give you some advice, and I thought the best way is just to create a space where some of the project team leads can come together and speak from their own experiences, and you can get a variety of perspectives. So for today, I'll just make a quick few announcements and introduce US Ignite and the program for those who don't know as much. And then for the first half, we'll turn it over to our team leads who are on the call to talk about their projects and updates, and they'll have about 10 minutes if they would like for that. And in the second half, we'll just open up the floor to more of a discussion of best practices, sort of pull back the curtain a little bit on the process, talk about the scoping out of projects, tips on project management, etc. And panelists are encouraged to ask each other questions, and I will kick off with some questions, and then we'll open it up to all the attendees, and I will unmute everyone so that they can ask questions themselves. So taking a step back, for those of you who are joining us for the first time or unfamiliar with US Ignite and the Global City Teams, US Ignite is essentially a convener. We're an independent 501c3 nonprofit that grew out of initiatives from the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and the National Science Foundation, and to accelerate next generation applications in the gigabit broadband communities and in all communities using Internet of Things applications. And the US Ignite team has a lot of experience with public-private partnerships and convenes partners across industry, academia, and government to identify and share best practices in these areas. So we have Joe Cochin and Bill McGuire, who are also from US Ignite, on the call. If you have questions for them later on, feel free to ask during the Q&A session. So US Ignite has partners across the country, like corporate partners like Juniper Networks, IBM, Intel, and of course broadband communities, and of course with NIST as well on this particular program, the Global City Teams Challenge. So we have Dr. Sakuri as well on the call from NIST, who will be available as well later on if you have questions for them. The Global City Teams Challenge is a collaborative network of projects, essentially, partnerships whose main goal and focus is really demonstrating Internet of Things applications that are tied to explicit value for citizens, and those demonstrations are geared towards this June 2015 timeframe. And NIST and US Ignite believes that convening across different sectors and different stakeholder groups can accelerate the process of development of these applications and also help identify standards that might need to be developed. So this federal program includes partners across the government, including the Departments of Transportation, Energy, Health and Human Services, the International Trade Administration, and of course the National Science Foundation, which has provided 2 funding opportunities that are applicable to this program, which we had a webinar on a few weeks ago and have some slides available at that link that you see on the screen there. You can access some more information about that. So US Ignite's role, one role that we play is providing an online portal for discovering and interacting with the various stakeholders on these action cluster groups that are providing these applications. So if you go to the US Ignite site through the globalcityteams.org link, that'll take you to a landing page. But if you're in the US Ignite site at large, just quick note that it is a broader site. It has different types of programs within it. So if you want to focus on the Global City Teams Challenge participants and look for those projects, you will go to the Communities tab and go down to the Action Cluster index and be able to search all the projects in their current form in terms of how their latest updates there on that website. And again, you can go to the globalcityteams.org website to hit that landing page, which has a list of them as well. And it would have a table like this. And we have about 30, actually a little more than 30 action cluster teams that are all at various stages of development. And new projects continue to come in week by week, including a few this last week. And we welcome new project submissions and welcome the opportunity to help you with accessing the NSF funding as well. So before I turn it over, quickly, just wanted to have a couple of housekeeping items for those who just joined. Quick reminder, we are recording this webinar for the benefit of the larger group, and we'll send out this to the larger Global City Teams network. And so if you have questions later and ask them, then you will be recorded, and so your participation is your consent. And I will unmute you at that time so you can ask questions directly. Also, if you see the chat box in the bottom right of your GoToMeeting application, you can chat questions there, and we'll be looking at that and trying to ask those questions that you might prefer us to ask panelists rather than getting on the audio. So, and then if you also are interested in learning more or joining the team, Global City Teams Challenge, you can email myself or Bill McGuire. The email's on the screen. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our panelists and hosts today have taken time to discuss their projects and some of their project management approaches. We asked three folks from different sectors to give us a variety of perspectives, including folks from the university setting and the hospital setting, from local government, and from a for-profit commercial perspective. And I think getting this variety will help different folks on the call or who are watching this, different perspectives on how these projects can come together. I just want to quickly check if Dr. Goldman has made it onto the call. And I think what we'll do is Dan, if you're amenable, we'll start with you and see if Dr. Goldman is able to join us a little bit later. So I'm going to unmute you, Dan, and just quickly, I'll just introduce you really quickly. So Dan Hoffman comes to us from Montgomery County, Maryland. He's the Chief Innovation Officer, and he's leading the SCALE Action Cluster that focuses on safe community alert networks for vulnerable citizens. And he is a veteran of the Smart America program, which is essentially this program's initial 1.0 last year. And he's responsible for maintaining strategies and programs that generate innovative ideas to improve service delivery effectiveness and efficiency and facilitate economic development in Montgomery County. Prior to that, he served on the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission as a senior project manager working on a variety of projects. And before that, as a consultant for PricewaterhouseCoopers, working with the Interdevelopment Bank and the Department. So no stranger to public-private partnerships and projects, and we welcome you, Dan, and look forward to hearing more about your project.
Thank you very much. As Adam said, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Montgomery County, Maryland. We were very pleased with the results of our involvement in Smart America, which was the precursor to Global Cities, and we're happy to hear that NIST and Dr. Ree and the team over there were putting together Global Cities. When we started thinking about what we would do with SCALE, moving into this next stage, we knew we needed to step it up a little bit. Our project in phase one we were able to create a rough functioning prototype in an affordable housing complex here in Montgomery County. But for phase 2, we really wanted to build something that would be sustainable and scalable. So for this particular project, we're bringing in a lot of new teammates, some of which I'm happy to see are here on the call today, and some new partners. We'll be announcing some additional cities joining us very soon. And really we're charting a course that goes beyond the June festivals that will allow us to demonstrate results by that time, but we're looking at it as a milestone for us, not the end point. So what we're putting together in Montgomery County is an alert system, but really a platform that will allow the public sector to capture and make useful decisions out of sensor data, out of the various data that can come off of all of the different smart buildings that are popping up, all of the different environmental sensors that are popping up, and really put that data in the hands of first responders, of caregivers, of public health officials to help make a safer, healthier environment for residents. And we're focusing this next stage on a senior housing facility. That'll be our test bed. In phase 1, we felt it important to have a real-world test bed, and we did that. In phase 2, we're growing that. We now have a larger senior living facility, and we will be working with to deploy the network using a variety of different methods, alternate airband communications, mesh networks, cellular, working with a lot of different partners, and really looking at what we can do to create a platform that taps into that very diverse ecosystem of sensor data. Obviously, for those who are from cities, you know that there's never one vendor, there's never one standard, there's never one protocol. But what can we do to create a platform that absorbs a lot of data that people can then build applications off of, and then put those applications and that functionality in the hands of firefighters and police officers and nurses. So I won't rattle through much more. I'll save time for questions later. But I think if you're looking to start a team or get a team going, focus on making it real. Have something that you can demonstrate. Don't just present a paper project. Run it like a project. A lot of teammates that are going to be volunteering their time, giving their time. Be respectful of that, and really create a story. Don't just show off tech for tech's sake, but tell the story of who would be using it, how it will actually play a role in the lives of everyday residents. And I think that's what helped us make a really compelling story for phase 1 and what will carry us through phase 2.
Thanks, Dan. I wonder if you could just give us a quick rundown of how it works. What's that story? What's that use case or user story that that you're focusing on right now?
Well, one of the things that we're the theme, so to speak, for this phase is healthy air, healthy water, healthy people. So what we're going to do is construct a story based on a day in the life, so to speak, or a few days in the lives of the residents in the building that we're actually going to be working. So the story that we're trying to tell is really of a handful of residents. Some of them might be elderly and aging in place. Some of them might be have some type of disability that prevents them, that limits their mobility. They might have respiratory issues. They might have mental health issues. They might have early stages of Alzheimer's. Really, what we want to do is make sure that we deploy a system that addresses a lot of those issues, and a lot of stuff that we're using, that we're deploying. Some of it's off the shelf, some of it's modified off the shelf, some of it we're getting from our partners. The idea is that once it's deployed, that we do it in a manner that is relatively low cost, so that the means of having a connected Internet of Things home isn't limited to just those that can afford it. As oftentimes the people that need this type of technology the most are the folks that can't afford it. And as someone who serves the residents of Montgomery County, it's something that we're constantly reminded of and aware of. Whether it's a fire in an apartment building or an elderly person that's struggling to maintain their home but wants to stay in it a little bit longer, those are the types of stories you want to tell. So we will look at air quality sensors that detect particulates, dust, mold, pollen, hazardous gases. We'll look at sensors that not only detect the presence of water and the ability of water for first response, but also ensuring that water isn't contaminated, that it is being used in an appropriate manner, that there isn't an undue amount being used, although we're not really focusing on the conservation aspect. And then the on-body stuff, really the remote health sensing. And this is why I'm really excited to have, and Dr. Goldman will talk about this a little bit. I'm really happy to start working with Dr. Goldman and the folks at Fort Detrick at the Telemedicine and Advanced Technology Research Center, TATRIC, and some of bringing more of a medical expertise to the team. In phase one, we had a lot of really smart folks that understood cyber-physical systems and how to build them and how to deploy them. This time around, we're now adding doctors and nurses and folks that can understand the ability for us to remotely sense the health and well-being of a resident, and that's obviously a use case that can be applied to many different areas. It can be applied to aging in place. It can be applied to soldiers in the battlefield. It can be applied to folks in a hospital or a quarantine situation. There are a lot of different use cases for it. We'll be specifically looking at the aging in place that's applicable to a lot of different sectors.
Great, thank you. And do you mind just mentioning a few of the partners, some of the different partners that are involved, just to give us another view on the sort of scope of the
I'm
project?
happy to do it. I'm going to rattle off a bunch of folks. Our team has grown significantly. So back from phase one, we have UC Irvine, Sigfox, IBM, MIT, SenseWare, let's see, and then new to the team, we have Intel Security, a local startup, N5 Sensors. That'll be our first real sensor maker. They actually make the chips in the NIST clean room. We have TATRIC, who I mentioned earlier. We're looking forward to identifying opportunities to partner with Mass General and Dr. Goldman. We've got EIC Data, a local company, and the Internet of Things meetup in DC. So we're trying to create a strong community component to this through meetups and working with the community to kind of build awareness. Another local startup, Captiva, Twilio. They're actually back from phase one. A great local company, Brevo Labs. They're going to focus on access, IoT based on physical access. AT&T is involved this time around, a local startup application company called Responder. And if I forgot anybody, I apologize. But yeah, right now we've got about 15 to 20 different partners. It looks like University of Maryland might be joining us. And then 2 cities. We're in the final stages. Government wheels turn slowly, but we're in the final stages of finalizing a partnership agreement with 2 other cities that will give us a presence in the West Coast and in the middle of the country. So the team is growing, and really I think that's what most of my time, for those of you managing a team, that's what most of my time is spent on, is getting it up and running, managing the different components and the different players, managing their expectations. We will have a lab space specifically for this project in a space we're lovingly referring to as the Thingstitute, which will be our IoT lab for this project. It'll be the staging area for the sensors before they're deployed in the senior living facility. And that we envision as a team space for anybody while they're in town, and really any Global Cities Challenge team that happens to be in and visiting NIST. If you want a place to work while you're in the area, if you want a place to meet, if you want a place to work on devices, feel free to contact me. You can get in touch with me through US Ignite or NIST. But the idea is that we'll have a team space that we want to make available to everybody in Global Cities Team Challenge.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that overview. Sounds like an interesting project, bringing together a lot of different applications to provide a low-cost model for monitoring health in buildings like the affordable housing units that you're prototyping, that you're demonstrating in this year, that you're focused on. I'm going to move to Dr. Goldman here. Dr. Goldman has a few slides. I'm going to try to make you a presenter, Dr. Goldman, and if it doesn't work, we can switch back to me. But I'm just handing it over to you, and while he's getting that up and running on his side, I will just introduce him quickly. So Dr. Goldman wears many hats. He's a medical director of biomedical engineering for Partners Healthcare System. He's a practicing anesthesiologist at Massachusetts General Hospital, and he's also the director of the program on medical device interoperability at Mass General. And in 2004, he founded the federally funded Medical Device Plug-and-Play Interoperability Research Program to promote innovation in patient safety and clinical care by leading the adoption of patient-centric integrated clinical environments. He's been working on a variety of healthcare standard-making bodies as well. He also participated in last year's Smart America program, and this year is continuing that work with a slightly different focus, most recently on Ebola and preparing for Ebola. So also in the healthcare and safety application space, but a different use case. And we welcome you, Dr. Goldman. Thanks for taking your time. I see you have the screen, and we'll hand it off to you.
Super. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
I can. You're on.
Okay. Wonderful. I hear myself too. Let's see. Okay, great. Well, I think I hear myself on your system.
Okay. I think that everyone else is muted, and it may be coming back through your speakers.
No, mine are off. I hear myself, I think, on your system.
Oh, I've got headphones in. I can hear you. I don't hear any echo.
Okay.
If anyone else has
I'll just
any
ignore it.
mute cat. Okay. Thanks.
All right. So thank you very much for the introduction. A little bit of the background. I'm going to jump over to a slide deck that we showed here on the September 29th, 30th event for the kickoff of the Global City Teams Challenge. And we envisioned in our small group then the idea that we could improve the care of citizens, people who might be exposed to bugs that can cause pandemics, we'll just say it generally, so various infectious diseases. And I'll show these slides only as a matter of history. We talked about perhaps there are smarter and better ways to monitor by integrating sensors from different manufacturers. We talked about the need potentially to shelter in place, to have remote diagnosis and monitoring dashboards and roll-ups, things of that sort. And we discussed a project scope, which would include the things we talked about, and we're very excited about the prospect of Montgomery County collaboration and deployment. That was back then, just to wind back the clock. And now we'll jump ahead to this slide deck. So on October 17th, we heard that there might be sorry about that. On October 17th, we heard about an interest in leveraging medical device technologies to improve the care of Ebola patients. The use cases that we identified that might be helpful were based very much on what we just talked about, the Smart America activities of last year and the new Global City Challenge slide deck that I just showed you. So we convened a group of manufacturers and other folks, including agencies such as Tatrick, with Betty Levine, who's already been mentioned, and Betty has been a co-leader on the new Global City Challenge. We also brought to the table the FDA, FCC, and a longer list, which I'll show in a moment, to identify pathways to improve the quarantine monitoring environment, as well as to improve the care of patients that are under medical care, for example, in an ICU. So from the pre-hospital quarantine environment, are there better ways of mixing and matching advanced sensors, leveraging inexpensive technologies, wireless, cell-based communication, mesh networks, and a host of other commonplace as well as cutting-edge technologies to improve the quality of caring for those people? And in the hospital, how could we avoid having a large number of caregivers directly enter a patient care environment, such as in this photo from an operating room? So the notion is that we would enable remote data display, remote device control, decision support capabilities to avoid unnecessary entry of personnel into the Ebola patient environment and more rapidly respond to the patient's needs. For example, here's a calculation that was performed by one of my colleagues at Mass General Hospital, Dr. Peter Freund, which shows that if you have 2 infusion pumps delivering medication, one of them has a carrier fluid and the other is a potent medication to support a patient who's in shock, and you have 30 feet of tubing so that you can keep the pumps outside the room and run the tubing into the room, it could take 20 minutes to achieve a steady state concentration of a potent drug that you start infusing outside the room. 20 minutes. And it can take 10 to 20 minutes to properly don protective gear to enter the room to adjust settings on the medical devices. We also consider the delivery of supplies in and out of the room with a robot that could be decontaminated in an ultraviolet light tunnel. So here are the collaborators that joined together from October 17th to November 6th to create the demos that I just touched on. And on this website, as you can see, the URL is, I'm sorry, I should make it much easier to see the URL, which is on the next slide, mdpnp.org/ebola.html. And on this page is links to press coverage of the event on November 6th, Boston Globe and various TV stations and so forth. And this video, which I don't intend to play, except I wanted to highlight a few of the segments, if they work. Well, let's let that, I'll see if that runs. And in the meantime, explain that what we did show is quite a bit of connectivity between the different medical devices, data dashboards, and related systems that were all performed during the hackathon period, the last 3 days of that 20-day period. So the next step now is folding in these components of these demonstrations back into the Global City Challenge. And we've already held a follow-up meeting with various collaborators in the demonstration to assess their appetite for participating now in this larger project. And I don't know why we're not getting the video to play, but I'll just give this another second and we'll see. while this is being teed up, make sure that Betty is unmuted. And Betty's already had meetings with Dan to talk about the connection with Montgomery County. And I don't know if you have anything you'd like to mention, Betty. Might be muted.
Yeah, sorry, he was muted.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if that was directed at Betty or me. So, yeah, one of the things I want to touch on what Dr. Goldman had in one of his early slides, that kind of before you get to the hospital type of situation where you're going to have an environment where people are going to want to come visit grandma. People are going to want to come visit their sick relative, their sick friend. You want to monitor kind of who comes, who goes. There's the vitals on the person themselves, which are, of course, important, but you want to understand the environment that they're in prior to coming to the hospital as well. I think a lot of the variance on this use case that, where I'm excited to team up with Dr. Goldman is that we'll be able to kind of better see the continuum of care from the time, when a person initially maybe is diagnosed or they're asked to kind of stay put or quarantined in their residence, let's say, be able to better understand who they've come in contact with, the level of care that they've gotten, what they're drinking, the level, what they're breathing, all the different things that, might help provide better care when the person gets to the hospital and provide a more complete picture of, their status when they arrive. So that's one of the things that I like in particular about the opportunity to work together with this particular project. And Betty from Patrick, has already been involved. We're writing our story right now, so to speak, as to what we want to show. And yeah, it's been great having Betty and her team in the loop so that we can craft in a kind of a nice seamless continuum in our story of how someone might go from our use case to Dr. Goldman's use case.
Dan, that's super. And I'm just wondering, can everyone see the video that's being shown?
I can see it.
Okay. And so some of the elements of this video describe the pre-hospital environment, the home environment, for example. In this segment, you can see someone wearing a sensor on their chest that comes in various forms, some of which already are being used for first responders. And this is a contactless device for measuring respiratory rate and temperature. So here, the vendors, researchers who came together were able to rapidly prototype some innovative systems. I'm glad the video worked. So I don't want to take any more time than that, and I'm not sure if Betty has anything to add. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, I should say, we are planning, in the earliest stages of planning, to host an event in our lab in Cambridge, Mass., as we had done for the Smart America initiative. The dates have not yet been identified, but we do have a venue that should serve well for collaborators to come together and perform technical work.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Appreciate that. Going to try to get Michael Jansen on. A little bit of audio issues. But yeah, it's exciting to see the different projects interact and intermingle with each other. Dr. Goldman, could you make me back the presenter, if you don't mind? Great. Thank you. Let's see. All right. give a few more minutes just to see if Michael Jansen can get the audio working. It was working before. Unfortunately, it's not working now. Why don't we move on to more of a sort of question and answer session. Hopefully we can get Michael's audio working. Maybe Bill, if you could help them with that, walking through and seeing if we can get that working. But for everyone else, maybe we can just talk about these two projects for a little bit. You both mentioned the idea that the projects are in the larger context of other initiatives and other projects. And so I wonder if you might speak a little bit to how the vision is how you see the Global City Teams Challenge fitting in with those larger initiatives or those other initiatives, and how is the project being tweaked to fit under the Global City Teams banner? Do you see the Global City Teams program as a way of accelerating those other projects? Just talk a little bit about the overlap and the interplay between this particular program and what we're trying to do with the demonstration in June, and with your own university or governmental initiatives and objectives. And I'll just sort of open it up to both of you, Dan and Dr. Goldman. Hopefully that sounds a little bit. Oh, I think Dr. Goldman, we might need to switch back off the speakers. But Dan, you're live if you have any thoughts about that.
One of the things I think is that's helpful, what I've found extremely helpful in the first stage, and again is becoming extremely critical in the second stage, is we had an MIT involved in the first time around. We'll be back the second time around, and it looks as though we might have University of Maryland involved as well. I think it's critical because you've got you get access to teams of people whose job it is to research, and they have access to students that can really serve as person power for these projects. Some Smart America projects, they were they had maybe some funding from a corporation, or they were maybe driven by a particular product that a corporation was developing, and thus had some money associated with them. But I think by and large, a lot of these projects, they weren't, they didn't have a ton of money associated with them. I know we did ours kind of on a shoestring in a very entrepreneurial manner. This time around we've got a little more we've got a few more resources, but what the universities bring to the table is, PhD students and professors that, this is their mission is to explore this type of thing. So I think having them involved has been critical. In phase one, it was critical because we actually had one of the UC Irvine students with us for, in Montgomery County for 6 months, working on this project. So it was, there's no way we could have done that project without them. And this time around, we're hoping for the same type of result and more, because we'll be adding more resources to the mix. We have companies that are funding fellows, helping to pay for stipends. That's really what we're hoping to continue to leverage to be successful. And now with the additional opportunities being provided by NSF, you have to have a university or research component on your team in order to qualify for some funding from NSF. At least that's the way I interpret it. So their involvement, we couldn't do it without them.
Great, thanks. So I think we've lost Julian now, but we've got Michael. So we'll pause on the Q&A a little bit and head over to Michael's project. So Michael, I've unmuted you. Michael Jansen is the chairman and CEO of CityZenith. He's working on a project that with the city of San Francisco called 5D Smart physical infrastructure. Michael's an architect, an urbanist, and an entrepreneur. He was educated as an architect at Yale and studied art and architecture in China and India. He founded his first venture-backed company, tech services company, CATALOGUE. I may not be pronouncing that correctly, in 2004. And in 2010 became CEO of CityZenith, which is a visualization and business intelligence platform that brings together a variety of forms of data, including public and commercial and citizen social media data sources to make them actionable for for cities. So I'll turn it over to you, Michael, to talk about how your project's evolving and say a little bit about that, and then we'll head back into the panel for more discussion.
Okay, thanks. Great. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. And I actually can show my screen if you like. It might be helpful to the discussion. Is there a way to make me a presenter?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Hopefully you'll be able to see a picture of the city of Barcelona in the middle of your screen.
Beautiful.
It is a lovely. Okay. So are we good to go then, Adam?
Yeah, I think everything's working in working order. Please take it away.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you for inviting me and asking me to come speak today and talk a little bit about our project. I'll explain as we get rolling here. Those of you who are able to access the video, some of this will become a bit more self-evident as we forward. But we're doing a project focused on energy management and buildings with the city of San Francisco. We ourselves, CityZenith, is a startup based between San Francisco and Chicago, and we have a data visualization platform for cities that we call 5D Smart Cities that was Google Earth.
Shoot, Michael, I think we might have lost you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you again. Great.
Okay, good. Good. Sorry about that. That would be Verizon. That would be, anyway, so what we're doing is we've created an interactive 3D interface for data in cities that kind of takes data from multiple sources, and both open and static government data, as well as IoT and data, and even social media, that into a single platform, interpreting it visually in the models of it works. So we began, we first deployed recently in Barcelona, and then subsequently in Amsterdam. And our company was actually, while a U.S. company, effectively in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe first before we actually moved to America with some of the solutions that we have now. Very excitedly signed on San Francisco and Chicago earlier this year. And what we're data are visualized, understood through a particular interface. We did was we talked to the city county and sort of propose it and expand it and propose it as a project for the Global City Teams Challenge. So what we've done is our original project, in collaboration with the Department of the Environment, sought to take data from the SFE's Green Building Ordinance Compliance database and visualize that in the model. Now, they track 2,000 buildings in San Francisco and major commercial buildings, and they have aggregated annual consumption data on those buildings, and they have goals and targets for those buildings. And they're about 20 to 30% off of their target right now in the city for plans with the city's Green Building Ordinance. And the goal is to begin taking this data and visualizing into a common platform so we can get not just the owners of these particular buildings involved, but the tenants, the people walking down the street that also have a carbon footprint, the city, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and kind of have a single common interface that allows all of them to do that together collectively and also pull through a large number of solutions. So we brought in the city and county of San Francisco, and then we brought in our partner, who will be providing their machine-to-machine partners an existing data set in the project, which will be more around real-time energy performance monitoring in buildings. There is a group called EcoMesh they work with, who is now part of this project, that provide those real-time point solutions that help building owners to reduce consumption by anywhere from 8 to 30% over the course of a year or two. It's interesting technology. We also expect other companies focused on energy management and electricity consumption reduction in buildings to be a part of this. We invited another startup called Streetlight Data, which tracks carbon emissions from vehicles passing through a site. So what we've done is that the city has given us a 2 square mile area of the city to work with, which is effectively the whole downtown San Francisco, where 80% of these buildings are. So we've shown the city's information at a micro level with the buildings, and then these individual partners getting very micro about the different buildings. We're going to have a pretty, we hope to have a composite and accurate picture of emissions in the city. And then now we can also, through some of these partners, begin to put together a picture of emissions, not just from the built environment, also from vehicles. So it should be quite thorough. So around this, we've got Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory working with us, again, principally on the energy management and building side, all the work with the DOE, et cetera, and Energy Star and the tools around that. And then recently, the San Francisco District 2030 group, I guess there are now 7 District 2030s across America, which we welcome, recently joined the partnership too. Now they have a mandate to encourage private building owners in the city to agree to achieving certain energy consumption goals over the course of a period of time. And already in San Francisco, of the 150 million available square feet, they've got about, I think, 7 or 8 million that have already agreed to their goal is to march that across and try to get as much compliance as they can. I think they have a goal of getting to 40 million within a year and a half. So, and lastly, because we also see this as a national and an international project, the C40 Cities Group recently agreed to be a part of team member 2. We already have a letter of intent with C40 to deploy our platform technology across their member cities around the world, and all 4 of our existing partner cities, Amsterdam, Barcelona, Chicago, San Francisco, are all C40 cities. So we chose San Francisco as an opportunity to create a module that effectively almost branded and by C40 itself, or with input to C40, would hopefully be able to look at Cisco and bring some of the best practices and working.
Wait, did we lose you again? I think we might have lost that Verizon connection. Okay, well, while Michael jumps back on, we've got the amazing visuals here from the project, from the 5D Smart City solution.
I'm back.
You might have it. All right, you're back.
Sorry about that. I was kicked out and kicked back in quickly. We're getting good at this. So anyway, I was wrapping up with that. C40 is involved. In terms of additional partners, I see the cities of Boston, Chicago, and Charlotte also getting involved, because those are all cities where models are currently coming up. And we welcome partners in all these different places to participate with different types of skills. We like everyone from the big companies to the small companies. All that's fine. I think that just in terms of a quick wisdom, I'm putting the team together. We already have an existing project, which you're kind of seeing on the screen, those you were looking at it. So we have a kind of a jump on the actual implementation, if you will, but not necessarily in terms of bringing all the parties together. That's been more recent. And we're excited about it. I think it's going to be really interesting, and we've got a lot of the right players involved in looking at this, not just nationally, but internationally. So hopefully This will help as we approach June and want to begin showing off some of the solutions that we presented. Our goal is to be ready by June, to be able to present this as a hopefully successful first implementation of a Global City Team Challenge, and also we intend to show this at the U.S. Conference of Mayors coming up in June of this year too. So lots to look forward to. Very excited about the project. Only wisdom I would offer about putting all the teams together is that there is it takes some thinking into who the players might be, just to keep an open-mindedness around the different types of players that might get involved. But I think I agree with one of the other speakers that one of our clear goals is to tell a story. So our goal is, as you're looking at this map on the screen and this image of Barcelona, is to be able to say, the story is that you can recognize a problem from 30,000 feet over the trees at the mayoral level, see it in the model rendered as a concern area, and then draw all the way down into source information on a particular floor, in a particular building, in a particular block, and do all of that from the same interface with multiple stakeholders collaborating at the same time. That was the goal, and that's what we'd like to prove through this particular project. If we can help, and I think a lot of people are involved in collaboration type projects in this Global City Team Challenge, and we certainly look forward to continuing to work with everybody else and learn from the things that you're doing too. So that's really it, Adam. I'm happy to take questions and offer any more suggestions as they're made.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. You could make me the presenter again. Appreciate it. And great. Well, I think we've already kind of started a little bit of the discussion, and we don't have a lot of time here left for discussion, but maybe we can jump back to that conversation. You mentioned, Michael, that this is part of a larger initiative, and sort of from the perspective of an existing, plan of commercially deploying something, and then bringing other partners in to sort of broaden the project to make it fit sort of within this particular Global City Team scope. Dr. Goldman, did you want to speak to the earlier question about sort of how Global City Teams fits into your larger, maybe university research initiative, and how you think about participation in the Global City Teams Challenge? I've unmuted Dr. Goldman, Dan, and Michael
Sure.
as well.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Sorry. Were you going to say something?
Okay. I think the important, so I will city, can you not hear me?
Sorry, I can hear you, but it's coming in and out a little bit. Yeah, I think I can hear you now.
Hi, Julian Goldman here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm not muted.
Better now. It's better now.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Well, or stop. There's a delay. Okay, well,
Hey,
okay, you can continue. So, I'll say that it's really advantageous to bring those stakeholders to the table. When it comes to especially the medical space, those of us who work in research environments, we're able to do certain things that is very difficult for manufacturers to do, and conversely, it is industry, manufacturers that bring products to market. And those of us in academic circles, don't develop medical devices and don't bring them to market. So the collaboration is really vital if we want to see innovative products developed quickly. That collaboration allows for the prototyping, the input, and then So that's number one. Number two, there's a need to bring together people in an environment that's safe, that is intended to allow different manufacturers and collaborators to explore new areas, which is not the way medical devices are typically brought to the market. In the case of what just came up with Ebola as being a stimulus, an impetus for even more rapid innovation in healthcare, the FDA made a powerful statement by writing a formal letter of support indicating that they would be at the table and help facilitate regulatory clearance of devices that would help support Ebola patients. And so that statement by the FDA, that formal position by the FDA, is in effect right now and will be helpful for manufacturers and researchers that want to work on continuing the Ebola use case as part of the Global City initiative.
I think I'm going to open up the floor in just a second. So if folks want to have a burning question, I'm about to unmute all of you, and we'll see if how that works out. Or you can chat your question in. Going back to the scoping of some of these projects and how it fits with other projects that you might have going on, I mean, how often or how much flux is there in the scope of the sort of final demonstration as you approach June? I mean, from your perspective, is this going to be an ongoing conversation through April, or have you kind of locked down, this is what we want to do, you know, we need to have that locked up by the end of December in order to really get something done meaningful at June and stick to that scope? How do you guys think about the flux of the scope of these projects and sort of locking it down, so to speak?
You know, for us in Montgomery County, and really for any project, it just comes down to the resources you have to commit to it and what you want to be able to identify as in scope and out of scope. We're setting really three milestones: June of 2015, December of 2015, June of 16. So we want to show a trajectory that takes us out about 18 months. So with that in mind, there are going to be some things that we put as in scope for the June events, the Global Cities event next June. There are going to be some things that we say, you know what, we can't accomplish it by then, or maybe we just need to do some mock-ups or a prototype by then. We'll put that off maybe to have it actually built until, you know, the December 15 milestone. You know, that's an ongoing conversation, and you know, for us, we're still in the process of identifying what's in scope for the first milestone next June. But I would say, you know, based on our experience from Smart America, if you don't have a pretty good feel for, especially if you're building something from scratch, you know, if you've got a product and you're out there trying to you know, get a product out there that's already been developed, that's one thing. But if you're actually building an ecosystem or creating a platform that's open, you want to probably have at least a pretty good idea of what you're doing by January, February.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from your perspective, if the nature of your project involves an open sort of effort where a lot of different people are contributing to an open source kind of platform of sorts, then there's a lot more dependencies on some of these external volunteer parties, and so locking in a scope for a demonstration might be a little more difficult than maybe say Michael, who they've got the commercial prototype or the solution, and they're deploying it in a different way. Michael, any thoughts about the scoping out for this particular project and how and with the dependencies there that you see?
In what way?
Just in terms of as you bring in other partners, I mean, I imagine that there are, and as folks who are looking at new projects now, they see a lot of different potential partners, a lot of different angles, a lot of different potential use cases or applications, you know, dashboards, many different ways to use some of the same technology. And as you kind of hone in on, okay, what are we going to do for June in the context of our overall solution and things like that.
Right.
How do you negotiate additional partners coming in and saying, well, can we do it this way and add this element to it or something like that? How do you think about locking down that scope
Right.
versus kind of keeping flexible?
Well, the only thing I do is just stick with the city and take approval from them. I mean, the mission is around energy management, specifically in the built environment. They welcomed the idea of bringing in, I mean, obviously, there's a direct correlation between energy consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, and so one of their goals also is to significantly reduce emissions in that particular part of town. And they welcomed other partners that actually had nothing to do with the built environment, like transportation, for example, which I think were great. And we basically told folks that we have a 3D object model, an interactive 3D model that can accommodate different types of data, but we have to tell one story. Whatever partners we choose have to contribute towards the story of improving energy performance, reducing carbon emissions. So if any particular partner can contribute to that story, they're welcome. And we'd like to see different partners do that. And one of the things the city wants to see is not just one partner, for example, that has a building-specific energy management solution, but maybe circle over time. And so we like to encourage everyone that can contribute to that particular vision, which is the city has set forward, and to participate with us. Sure. Now, having said that, we can't take so many parts, at least up until the June time frame. We want to keep it kind of tight. I think what we agreed for us to do is be able to consolidate, utilize, and put data on all the buildings and get micro about 2 to 3, so that we can really begin to, we don't have to do the entire, the whole downtown San Francisco to prove the point. But, and then include, a few other things. And I think, for example, the transportation-related data, and then on top of that, have oversight by the standards organizations like C40, and work closely with organizations that would like to see this technology or the solution, whatever it is, deployed in many other cities. So, we're kind of keeping an eye on the most granular part of, of the concern of the building owner, and then going back out to C40 and saying, well, how do we ensure that this is replicable and could be scaled across their cities too? So we're looking both ways, but I would just generally encourage us. We're pretty getting close on seeing my part, but we want to keep it tight and just be really good and robust by June, so that we tell the story, and then after that, it can always scale. And that's obviously the hope.
Great. Thank you. I know I'm cognizant of the time, so it's 1:10 or 1:08. I want to thank everybody for joining. I would love to ask a few more questions, but I wanted to give you guys the chance to go off to your next meetings. If you have a few minutes, maybe just for posterity, I could ask a couple more questions. If you need to run, feel perfectly free to do so. I want to thank everyone who dialed in for joining. If you would like to stay on for a little more discussion, please do. But everyone else who needs to head out, free to do so. If you have questions for the panelists, you can also chat them in the application, and we can try to address them. Dr. Goldman, Michael, Dan, do you have about 5 more minutes? Maybe we could continue the conversation.
Yep, I got 5 more. And if anybody's dropping off and wants to get in contact with myself or any of my teammates, NIST and US Ignite folks know how to get in touch with me, but you can always go to the US Ignite website and get in contact with me through that way as well.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, each of these teams have a website, an Action Cluster website on the US Ignite portal. So just coming back to a couple of thoughts that I just wanted to throw out there for folks who are looking at starting or coalescing their idea into a project. From a dedicated project manager perspective, I know, Dan, you mentioned having some PhD students donated, as it were, by USC Irvine or UC Irvine was extremely helpful in kind of getting the project going and accelerating that. So having that resource on board is important. Does anyone else have, Dr. Goldman or Michael, any thoughts about bringing in outside managers from the ecosystem? Is there a certain kind of free help that should be avoided when it comes to interns or college students or PhD students who want to be involved, or is it sort of all welcome? Just wonder if you might give some thoughts about how you think about bringing in some project management resources into the project.
Actually, I want to jump in because that might be a hard question to answer. Obviously, free skilled help is great, and if they're willing to jump in, help actually build or execute a particular part of your scope, then great. What I run into more often than not, and this has happened already in the course of Global City Teams, is we've turned down either companies or specific types of technology that really didn't fit the story. I think more often than not, that's managing your scope so that you don't dilute the message you're trying to tell through your story is the most important thing. So we've had some companies that either they wanted to demonstrate something, but they also wanted to be compensated, let's say, for their technology. If that's not in the budget, that's not in the budget. If it's very compelling and we do want to make it a component of the story, we might try to find a way, whether it's some type of technology loan of some sort, but more often than not, it's not interns that I turn away. I can find a way to make them useful for the most part. It's more the keeping on story, keeping on message, and having to say no to some companies that they might have very compelling, very useful technology, but there's no clear path to incorporate it into your story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The story. I tried unmuting everyone, but I'm hearing some echo, so I'll just unmute everyone sort of one by one if you would like to be unmuted. Thanks, Dan. Dr. Goldman or Michael, anything to add? Okay. Any other burning questions from anyone else at US Ignite?
I guess the only question I would have is to ask Dan and Michael and Dr. Goldman whether they have created any tools, whether they're using anything of a project management spreadsheet or in any way have something that they have found useful as they manage their project and bring it together. Michael, I know you're just getting going, but maybe Dr. Goldman and Mr. Hoffman could talk about their experience of managing a project with Smart America.
I'm a PMP for what it's worth. That's generally the methodology I subscribe to, which works well in certain instances. And those are the principles. When I talk about milestones, when I talk about scope, there are tons of templates and tools through the Project Management Institute that I'll occasionally use if I need to put together a schedule or some type of tool to help manage the project. That's generally what I go to just in terms of my process. But it's different for you don't want to apply a hard and fast project management methodology to something that is maybe a little more fluid, or a team that's purely volunteer. There are a lot of complications when you try to institute a pure project management methodology to these types of projects, because in this situation the project manager pure control. They don't have total control over the project. There's a lot. You're managing volunteers. You're managing stakeholders. It's harder to manage than your typical project in some ways.
Hi, Julian here. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, Adam, I think we've we've really taken a lot of our experts' time, and we should probably let them go to their real jobs. But as Adam mentioned, we're recording the webinar, and we hope that this will be a useful resource that we can point folks to as more and more folks contact US Ignite and NIST and ask how they establish an action cluster. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your perspective and showcasing your project today.
Yeah, thank you, Julian here. Thank you very much. I was off, couldn't hear me for a few minutes, but I also obviously am here to help and share the experience that we had with Smart America and what we're doing now with the Global City Team Challenge. And I think especially what we could help with is the medical device aspect, questions that come up about what could be shown publicly from a regulatory perspective and how to engage medical device companies and balance innovation with commercial products. And I agree fully with the scoping challenge and approach that was mentioned.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And we will have a few more series of presentations in the next few months, so stay tuned for that. I think we heard one big key takeaway is for scoping these projects is really find that specific story, that use case, and let all the decisions around scope sort of rest on the strength of that story. And I appreciate Dan and Julian and Michael for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.